So let's talk about a president who didn't just steer the country through one crisis, but through two of the biggest crises in modern history. We're diving into the story of Franklin Delano Roosevelt, a guy whose own personal struggles and massive public ambitions didn't just change America, they completely rebuilt it from the ground up. Okay, let's just start right here with this idea, because honestly, you can't even begin to understand President Roosevelt's politics until you understand the man. I mean, how does a crippling disease, this devastating personal tragedy, end up forging the exact leader a nation would need to get through a total economic collapse and a world war? And really, that's the core question we're going to unpack here. See, his story isn't just about politics and programs. It's about how one man's personal journey, from a life of total privilege to one of paralysis, somehow mirrored and then guided a national transformation. Let's see how he did it.
All right, so first, you have to understand where this guy came from. Franklin Roosevelt was born into a world of serious wealth and privilege. I mean, the whole path was laid out for him. Fancy schools, a fast-track political career, it was all going according to plan. Until the summer of 1921. When absolutely everything changed.
He was on vacation with his family, and what seemed like just a cold got worse, fast. Within days, he couldn't walk. The diagnosis was polio, and for all intents and purposes, that should have been the end of his political career. Instead, it was the beginning of this grueling, daily battle with incredible physical suffering. Now this is what's so fascinating. The sheer effort he put into managing how the public saw him. He absolutely knew that in that era, America would not elect a man they perceived as weak or disabled. So he constructed this incredible illusion of mobility, using these heavy steel leg braces and his son's arm to make it look like he was walking. But in private, he was almost always in a wheelchair that he actually designed himself. So that personal strength, that ability to manage an impossible crisis, was about to be tested on a national scale. Because when FDR finally takes office in 1933, the United States is at rock bottom. The country was cratering. The banks were closed. A quarter of the country was unemployed. It was chaos. His answer was the New Deal. It was this massive, unprecedented wave of new laws and agencies. And the whole thing was brilliantly organized around this simple idea: relief, recovery, and reform. Relief was immediate help, food, jobs, anything to stop the bleeding. Recovery was about jump-starting the whole economy with big projects. And reform, well, reform was about putting new rules in place to make sure a disaster like this could never, ever happen again. Now, you better believe this was controversial. People were screaming government overreach. But FDR's attitude was basically, the country is on fire, we have to try something, anything. And here's the key takeaway. That reform part, that wasn't just some band-aid solution. It fundamentally and permanently changed the relationship between the government and the American people. Things like the FDIC, the Wagner Act, and especially Social Security, these created the very foundation of the social safety net that we know today. And this number right here, this shows you the real-world impact. Before the New Deal, unions had almost no legal power, but the Wagner Act gave them the right to organize and bargain. And what happened? Boom. Union membership exploded, nearly tripling in just a few years. It completely changed the balance of power in the American workplace. And this isn't just some dusty old history. These reforms from the 30s are still a huge part of our lives. That little FDIC sticker on your bank store, that's from the New Deal. The Social Security system that millions of people rely on for retirement, that's a direct living legacy of what FDR built. But just as the country was starting to get back on its feet from the Depression, an even bigger storm was gathering on the world stage. FDR's next challenge was somehow convincing an America that wanted nothing to do with foreign wars to become the leader of the entire free world against the Axis powers. And how he pulled this off, wow. It was like watching a master strategist at work, step by step. First, he gave the country a mission with his famous For Freedom speech, framing it as a fight for values everyone could believe in. Then he cleverly got around isolationist laws with the Lend-Lease Act, turning America into the arsenal of democracy. He personally managed the Big Three alliance with Churchill and Stalin to win the war. And even before it was over, he was already designing the peace that would follow as the main architect of the United Nations. But here's the thing, you can't manage two gigantic, world-altering crises like the Depression and World War II without changing the system itself. And in the process of fighting those battles, FDR permanently expanded the power of the presidency, creating the powerful, modern institution we have today. I mean, just look at the before and after here. Before FDR, the presidency was, well, it was a much smaller operation. It mostly reacted to what Congress did. After FDR, it became this massive, powerful engine at the center of government, with its own huge staff, driving its own agenda and shaping everything around it. And a perfect example of him flexing this new muscle was his fight with the Supreme Court. The court kept striking down his New Deal programs, so he came up with this audacious plan to just add more justices who agreed with him. Now, the plan itself failed in Congress. It was too radical. But as a future Chief Justice pointed out, just the threat was enough. The court backed off, and FDR got what he wanted in the end. But, and this is a huge but, this newly supersized executive power had a really, really dark side. On February 19, 1942, in the absolute panic after the attack on Pearl Harbor, FDR used that power to sign Executive Order 9066. This order, with zero evidence of any widespread treason, authorized the U.S. military to round up and imprison over 120,000 people, many of them American citizens, for no other reason than where their ancestors came from. It's a decision the government itself would later call a grave injustice, and it remains this huge moral stain on his presidency, a chilling reminder of what can happen when fear and executive power get combined. So after 12 years, 4 terms in office, what's the final takeaway? It's that FDR's legacy is both absolutely monumental and deeply, deeply complicated. He isn't a simple hero or a villain. He's the guy who literally built the America we live in today, for better and for worse. His fingerprints are just everywhere. The giant federal government we have, the idea that America has to be a leader on the world stage, the very concept of a social safety net, that's all him. But at the same time, his 4 terms in office scared the country so much that we passed a constitutional amendment, the 22nd, just to make sure no one could ever hold that much power for that long again. Which leaves us right here with a question that's just as relevant today as it was back then. In order to save the country from the crises of his time, Roosevelt created a powerful new tool, the modern American presidency. But is that tool, with all its incredible power, ultimately a safeguard that protects us in a crisis? Or is it a danger to our democracy? That's the debate he started, and it's a debate we're still having to this very day.